Alrighty. Let me make sure this is working. I think it is. Hey! Back in Old Faithful. How do you like the green screen setup? I thought I'd mix it up a little bit today. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech Live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I'm back home. Made it quite an adventure. Check out Tailosive Talks if you want to see what happened. But yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about what was being asked about as I was editing today's video, which will go live after this live stream. Today's video is not about the iPad Air 5, but I figured it would make for a good live stream discussion because, as August Amberson is already bringing up in the chat, we kind of know everything that's basically happening with the iPad Air 5. Apple might sneak in a few Easter eggs here and there that we don't know about, but for the most part, we know they're going to add center stage. They've added that to the budget iPad. Maybe a couple of new colors. Honestly, they'll probably break the color options, if I'm being quite honest. They're likely going to throw in Starlight and Midnight instead of Space Gray, and instead of green, they'll have a booger or, some stupid color options that are different from the current iPad lineup. But of course, it's not a Pro iPad, which means it's got to be vibrant. It'll still be 60 hertz. They might add flash on the back, given the iPad Mini 6 got the flash. And of course, 5G surprisingly hasn't found its way onto the iPad Air yet after all this time. And I think originally they wanted to do OLED on the iPad Air, and then the supplier fell through, or the display panels weren't good enough. So they just decided to settle with the same old LCD they used on the Air 4. So the more we talk about this, the more it's sounding like a fairly minor spec bump. We're switching from the A14 chip to the A15 chip. And just so it's on par with the iPad mini, which makes sense. That's a cheaper iPad. Why does it get the faster CPU? It gets some center stage, it gets some 5G, maybe gets the flash. That's the main changes we're expecting. It would be nice if they ended up doing 128 gigs of storage, but I don't think that's rumored. I think that Apple intentionally will leave it at 64 gigs. Just so that the iPad Pro has some more stuff going for it, because maybe they don't want the iPad Air to cannibalize it too much. But yeah, I'm excited to see, if there's anything at all that they're planning on surprising us with, aside from just the standard, okay, the CPU's faster now, maybe the speakers get a little bit better, it's still going to be Touch ID. They don't want Face ID on anything else, other than the Pro options, at least for now. Which makes me, again, wonder, is this actually going to be worth the wait? Because as you guys know, when the iPad Air 4 came out, I was underwhelmed. I felt like the fact that it didn't have Face ID and started at $599 kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was not super happy with the $600 starting price if you're not going to include Face ID. I was just like, it's just a tad too expensive. I think I could have lived with Touch ID if it was $499. But I ultimately just said that you were better off buying a certified refurbished iPad Pro. I know I recommend that thing a lot, but that's because I believe in it, and it's an amazing deal. And Apple certified refurbished is incredibly reliable, so I would definitely recommend more people buy an iPad Pro over an iPad Air, unless you're just in a die-hard need of Touch ID. If you're going to be using this 11-inch iPad at school or whatever, and you need to wear a mask all the time, I guess Touch ID would be important there, and you don't care about 120 hertz. To me, that's rather important, but I understand it's not important to everyone. So the more I realize that, we know about the iPad Air 5, I don't think it really fixes my main value issues with it. I'm kind of frustrated with the pricing for the specs offered when there are just so many good, cheap, old iPad Pros that you can buy. And I don't think the A15 chip is going to be drastically different from the A12X or the A12Z. So, if you're interested in the iPad Air 5, that means your budget is basically around $600. And still to this day, I'll double check to make sure, I've always seen refurbished iPad Pros, even from 2020, that go for about $600. And those are going to have 128 gigs of storage. I guess they're selling out of them right now. I don't see the base storage option anymore, but I do see a 512 gig option for $860, which is not bad. I'm looking around at the refurbished page. Yeah, so I guess the cheapest iPad Pro with, the traditional no home button, 120 hertz, $859, but it's 512 gig, which is $140 less. So I guess if you care about storage, that's there. But of course, the certified refurbished page gets restocked all the time. You just got to wait around for a deal. Plus, I'm sure there's sales and discounts going around with Amazon and stuff offering cheaper versions of the iPad Pro. I just feel like that's still going to be the recommendation for me, unless you're in the camp of just you really, really need Touch ID. I don't know if that's most people, especially with a lot more working from home. The friends we stayed with in Puerto Rico, he was using an iPad quite a bit, and obviously, when you're working from home, wearing the mask is not as crucial. So Touch ID is pretty much the only saving grace for the iPad Air 4 and 5. So it's obviously the worth question is always subjective. It's always going to depend on what matters to you in a product, what's crucial. And I think that unless you're just in dire need of Touch ID, the iPad Air 5, to answer the question in the title, not worth the wait. I just don't think it will be. I think I would rather recommend people buy a $600 or $500 iPad Pro certified refurbished, because I still believe that will be a better product. Sure, you don't get center stage, but the A12X and A12Z is still plenty fast. I think it's close to on par with the A15. It probably beats it in some regards, and if not, it's insanely close in single core performance. Um, if certified refurbished isn't a thing in your area, I mean, look at Best Buy, look at Amazon. They have sales all the time, especially on used models with the older iPads. I just think that I would rather have the high refresh rate and Face ID. If that was my choice, that's what I would call for. Ben Anonymous says new iPad Mini with Face ID. That would be great. I don't think it's gonna happen, but yeah, I would love it. Something I've been noticing is the response time difference between LCD and OLED. There's a lot of ghosting on LCD, even on the mini LED iPad Pros, but the OLED iPhones are so smooth. Yeah, I think it has something to do with the pixel technology, just that OLEDs are, organic. The light itself is, the pixel itself is what's creating the light, whereas the LCD is still backlit powered. So there's just a slight bit of, what did you call it, ghosting. That makes sense because the LCD is just fundamentally engineered differently. So I get it, but it's only a matter of time, because OLED has its own set of disadvantages too, like the burn-in, which is why they're probably more hesitant to bring OLED to an iPad or a Mac, because the screens are going to be on much, much longer than iPhone screens are going to be on. Let's see, maybe mini OLED, but with 60 hertz still. I don't think OLED's coming to the iPad at least anytime soon. I think there was some talk about them doing it this year, and then they got pushed back because either supply chain got hit or the production yields weren't strong enough. Apple has pretty high tolerance when it comes to, not high tolerance, but Apple has like high standards when it comes to this is how good the display has to be for us to put it on an iPad or a MacBook, because they know a lot of their customers are going to hold on to their iPads and MacBooks for a long, long time. So if it starts getting burnt in after 3 to 4 years, they're not okay with that. Whereas iPhones, because the display is statistically just not on as long as it is on iPads or Macs, they probably don't care about the burn-in as much because people won't notice it. Will we see the new iPad Pro in March? I really want one. I'm hoping for a partial redesign. So far, from what I've read, iPad Pros are rumored for later this year. iPad Air 5 is rumored for March. So there's supposed to be a spring event. I say March. It might be April. At least according to Ross Young. That's when we're getting the stupid iPhone SE refresh, which is stupid because it's the same exact design, just with 5G and the A15 chip. And rumored to be the exact same battery, which means that with 5G, probably worst battery life in any modern iPhone will be coming out in the April time period. And then alongside that iPhone, you'll get the Air 5, which will have center stage, 5G, and maybe the flash and an A15 chip. And then, of course, the Apple Silicon version of the 27-inch iMac, which I personally think they'll brand it as iMac Pro because it's supposed to be a 27-inch mini LED display with 120 hertz. That sounds like a Pro product to me. That doesn't sound like just a slightly larger version of the 24-inch iMac, so that's why I'm predicting black bezels, but probably still a chin, better I/O on the back than the 24-inch iMac, and maybe some watch band refresh here and there. Maybe a new iPhone color. They might throw in a slightly updated version of the iPhone 13 color option, but iPad Pros I don't think will be until like October or November of this year. Ooh, wonder why you lag. Let me make sure you're okay. I think you're okay. All right. If there was lag, let me know because I'm streaming from the phone today. I'm testing out some internet things. So let me know if there's lag because I'm curious. Let's see. Have you ever noticed on an old iPhone with an LCD, if you could accidentally left it in the cold, the screen would look very slow, ghosty? No, I can't say I've noticed that. But I don't live in a very cold climate, so maybe I wouldn't notice it because it doesn't get extremely cold here. I mean, it gets a little cold. Um, Dovanus says, "So glad you're back. Quick question: what do you prefer, aluminum or steel watch?" So I prefer the look of aluminum, but the reason I get the steel Apple Watches is because they come with the sapphire infused glass, which means these things age incredibly well. There's no scratches, there's no dings or scuffs on it at all. My wife is still using a Series 3, that stainless steel, and I don't baby my watch. You know, I've hit it against things, especially on my trip. It's been scratched against rock, it's been scratched against metal and door frames, and I've banged this watch up a lot and it still looks pristine. I love the sapphire infused glass, so that's why I get the steel. But they don't offer sapphire infused glass on the aluminum option. So if they did, I probably would buy the aluminum. But the nice perk of this is that the steel chassis is the exact same color as my 13 Pro Max, which I'm streaming from right now. So a little bit of ecosystem symmetry there, which I appreciate. It'll probably be worth it for most people who can't get a refurbished Pro. Really, it should be the baseline at this point because the base iPad isn't worth it unless you're super broke. I think to average consumers, it's still worth it. Like, normal people aren't going to care about laminated displays or home buttons. They're just thinking iPad. They don't really think about the drastic design differences unless they're like slightly more techy. It's probably more of a spectrum. You know, sometimes as tech reviewers refer to average consumers versus tech enthusiasts, and we act like there's no in between. There's probably a spectrum of people that are in between of like, yeah, I do kind of notice the more modern design without the home button and the thinner bezels, and I'd rather have that. There's probably some people that would be willing to shell out the extra money for the iPad Air, but do we typically get new watch bands every spring event? Well, we typically do get spring refreshes in terms of cases and watch bands. They don't always have to be at the event, but that's usually seasonal. That's when they launch new bands. Let's see. It won't be stupid for me when I upgrade from the current SE in 3 to 5 years. Oh, it'll unless you're super broke. Yeah, I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be stupid, but when you upgrade from the current SE, I guess I just think that the battery life is going to be inherently worse. If you're still rocking an iPhone SE in today's world, and you still haven't even upgraded to the SE2, then you probably don't care about 5G very much, which is why I would recommend you try to find an iPhone 11. It'll cost $100 more, I know, and maybe someone on a budget can't shill out the extra money, but I would just really, really push you to look around for a sale. I bet you could find a used iPhone 11. You'll have a bigger display, you'll have much better battery life, you'll have Face ID, it'll have a much more modern looking phone. Maybe a 10R. If there's a 10R anywhere, I'd recommend you get that. Did you ever break a phone screen while exercising? I've never broken a phone screen ever in my whole life. Of all the iPhones I've ever owned, I rarely use cases with them, and I've never cracked a screen. I've dropped them, but it's usually on like carpet or something lightweight. So I've never like just straight up cracked a screen. No, the AirPower sound doesn't play when I'm streaming off the phone. Although it should, because the service I use that's making the animations happen whenever someone super chats, that's Streamlabs, and I'm streaming from the Streamlabs app. So I don't understand why they don't let you use your own animations that you set up with an account through Streamlabs and put those on the smartphone streaming experience. I don't understand why that's so hard. Mike says, I own an iPad 9 after switching from a Mini 4. I'm enjoying it, and I didn't notice that it isn't a laminated display. I don't think most people would, to be frank. You know, I knew a bunch of people that bought the budget iPad when it came out, and they still have them. They still use them to this day. It's like, for someone that's really not into the bells and whistles and the fine details in iPads like that, it is still a solid deal. Like, if someone bought that and enjoyed it, there's nothing you can say that would make them not want it anymore. That is just an absolutely amazing value. Um, some carriers sell iPhone 11 for $499. Yeah, Apple sells the iPhone 11 for $499 unlocked, so you don't even have to find it through a carrier. Um, Tailosive podcast soon. Yeah, we're trying to get everyone's schedules aligned. I haven't seen an official announcement made from the guys yet, so I guess I'll announce it. But we're basically, if all goes according to plan, stuff might go wrong. So this is not a concrete date, but if all goes according to plan, the podcasts should be back on February 5th. That's, I think, the soonest everyone was available well, we'll record it on the 4th but post it on the 5th. So yeah, we've missed the show. It's very encouraging to find out other people also miss the show, because for us it just feels like we're talking with our friends. It doesn't feel like a show or a broadcast or anything. But we've been seeing the comments and people being like, oh, what happened to the podcast? Is the podcast coming back? This, because everyone was traveling and there's so much busyness in everyone's world, this is the longest break we've had. But I'm excited to see people want the show to come back, because I want to bring it back too. So yes, the podcast, if all goes well, will be back on the 5th. My parents still use an iPad 5 and 6. They don't care about design, even if I try to convince them. I know you can't convince people they like it. Let's see, how's the 13 Pro Max holding up right now after swimming with it? So it's a funny story. It's actually held up pretty great. So yeah, I swam with it in the Caribbean, and I took it like 20 feet deep at least. It might have been closer to 25 feet deep in salt water, and that's not recommended. You shouldn't do that. Don't do what I did. But after I took it out, it all worked fine except for the speaker rattled a little bit. And only at certain frequencies. Like if I kept the volume below 50%, I couldn't hear the rattle. If I turned it up all the way and listened to certain audio, I would hear this rattling. And I was like, uh-oh, I broke the speaker. So later on, at a different beach, I was filming the fish, because the fish were swimming right up to my feet. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. My speaker's broke anyway, so I'll just keep filming underwater. So I filmed my phone under the water and took it out again. And then the rattle was gone. So the water dislodged the debris, the sand, whatever was inside the speaker, and now the speaker sounds fine again, and it works great. So again, it's not recommended. I wouldn't say, hey, everyone go out there, take your iPhone swimming 20 feet deep. But no, after I took it in the water again, the speaker sounds great, so it's good as new, and everything else on it works. Nothing else has gone wrong. The earpiece still works. The cameras all work. The touchscreen's fine. So yeah, I'm a little bit dangerous with my phone, but it got some really impressive shots out of it. So I was happy, because I was like, this memory of swimming with these fish in the tropics, that's forever. The phone is temporary. I'm gonna hold on to this phone for a couple of years, of course, and I honestly don't use the external speaker on my phone that often. Mostly if I'm watching a movie or a show, I'm gonna use my headphones anyway, because even when the speaker on your phone works great, it's still not a fantastic sound quality. So I didn't really care if the speaker was damaged, but yeah, it held up fine. Let's see. Would you rather have an iPhone with USB-C, really thin bezels, or with an iPhone with 120 hertz? What do you think? Or a iPhone with 120 hertz? I'd rather take 120 hertz over USB-C, just because even if my iPhone had USB-C, I wouldn't use it. I'm a big fan still of MagSafe. I know I've advocated all the time that you should put USB-C on the iPhone, but that's all from the precedent of, if the iPhone has a port on it, put the best port on it. That's my simple logic. And the best port is USB-C. That's why Apple puts it across most of their iPads. That's why they put it on their MacBooks. That's why it's like the only port on the 24-inch iMac. It's the most capable. It has the highest throughput. It has the fastest charge rates. Like, USB-C is wonderful. So if you're going to have a port, use USB-C. However, I don't use the port much on my phone. I'd rather AirDrop everything, and I'd rather, with one hand, drop my phone on a MagSafe charger at the end of every day. So if I could only pick USB-C at 120 hertz, I would take 120 hertz, because that I will notice and appreciate every day. Whereas USB-C, I probably would hardly ever use the port still. Is it a smart idea to buy and use an iPhone 6 Plus in present day? If you're somehow using something worse, what are you using currently? No sweat, Jonesy. If you're using like an iPhone 4 right now, I guess the iPhone 6 is an upgrade, but it's still old. It's still not running the latest version of iOS. Like, what kind of deal are you getting on it? I hope you're not spending more than $100. If you can get an iPhone 6 and you're currently using an iPhone 4 somehow, I don't know how you're still doing that, but if you can find an iPhone 6 for sale for like $50, I guess that's a good idea. But if you're talking about spending $150 or $200, then go on Amazon. You'll find an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 7 that's available, and that'll run the latest version of iOS. Um, just don't spend a bunch of money on it, I guess, if you have it. Um, Weird problem I have with my 2017 12.9-inch Pros, the screen will just stop responding for like 10 seconds, and bending it will help it stay responding longer. That's funny. Model Y Mike says he had the same issue with his iPad being unresponsive from time to time. I don't know what they did wrong with it. I'm hearing rumors that iPad Mini 7 could have dual cameras around 2023/2024. Is this true? I wouldn't count on it. I think it's way too far in advance. The iPad Mini, at least so far, Apple has never refreshed it annually. It's pretty much every other year or sometimes longer, sometimes every 3 years or 4 years. So I expect the current iPad Mini 6 to stay the way it is for a long time. And Mini 7 is probably way too soon for rumors. And the iPad Air is not even rumored to have dual cameras, so I don't know why the Mini 7 would get dual cameras next. It could be true. There's a lot of news and rumors that could change within the next 2 years, but I wouldn't count on it. I don't think anybody reliably can claim they know what the iPad Mini 7 will have. Okay, let's see. Thoughts on the regular iPhone 13? I like those questions. Thoughts. What? On what? Nothing. Just thoughts. Okay. I'm thinking. It's fine. It's fine. It's a good phone. It's a decent phone. Most people should probably get that one. It's probably the best-selling phone in the world. Why is Apple pushing everything for fall and only leaving the boring SE and iPad Air for the spring? Doesn't it make more sense to spread it out? I would say the spring is normally when Apple has their boring events, so I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, you're not going to come up with better technology and then just decide to delay the release so that you have something to talk about later, because there's plenty of things to talk about later in the year. We got the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, we're going to have iPhone 14, we're going to have the redesigned MacBook Air with the M2 chip, probably a updated Mac Mini, updated 13-inch MacBook Pro, updated iPad Pros, AirPods Pro second generation is rumored to come out in the third or fourth quarter of this year. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff to talk about in 2022. Get the boring stuff out of the way in the spring. That's statistically just how Apple has done their events in the past, is always just like the minor refreshes. Actually, last year I would say was a bit of an exception. We had quite an eventful spring event. It was at 420, which we never thought they would do it, but they actually had a 420 event. And we got AirTags, we got a new Apple TV with the redesigned Siri remote, we got the new iMac, the new iPad. It was a packed event for something that normally is not a very packed event. The spring event will be focused more on the iMac Pro, I think. I definitely think iMac Pro will be the most interesting part of the event. I don't know if I would say that's the main focus. I think the iMac Pro will probably be the last thing they talk about, just because it's probably what the most amount of people are interested in. You mentioned keeping your iPhone 13 for several years. Any mindset on minimum amount of years? The only thing someone has suggested, I kept saying I can't think of any reason to upgrade my iPhone because the display is amazing. I don't mind the notch at all. I don't care if it gets smaller or it goes away. That's not going to get me to upgrade. I want USB-C on the iPhone, but it won't get me to upgrade either because I'm not going to use it. It has MagSafe. So I was like, I can't think of anything that would get me to upgrade. And the only thing someone said that tempted me was they were like, what if Apple glasses come out and you need a certain generation iPhone or newer to use it? Okay, let me be clear. We're not talking about the headset. I still have a hard time believing that actually exists or it's going to happen. Excuse me. I don't think Apple's going to make a strap around the head. I don't think that's going to happen, but I would not upgrade my phone just to use the headset with the, completely covered glass. But I would be very interested in augmented reality glasses, something that you could wear with you all day, use it while you're driving, you could use it in public, and it's fashionable, it's not ugly. Something that projects on top of reality, but it's not a full display. The headset that's been rumored is supposed to be a full screen that covers your eyes and you look like, Ready Player One or whatever. I don't care as much about that because it'll probably just be good for living room games or basic AR demos and that kind of thing. But I also don't think Apple glasses are that close. I think we probably still have another 3 or 4 years before Apple glasses are ready. So I would say I'll probably keep using the iPhone 13 Pro Max until either it breaks completely or I don't know. At least I want to say at least 3 years, um, maybe 4 or 5, depending on how interesting the iPhone gets. And it's also not likely that the Apple glasses would require an iPhone of a certain generation that would be super recent, because even when the Apple Watch came out, you could pair it, I think, with an iPhone 5 or 5S, even though the 6S or 7 was available at the time. No, it was the 6. They unveiled the Apple Watch with the iPhone 6, but you could still pair it with an iPhone 5, I think. So even if the Apple Glass isn't that far away, I still think I'll be able to use it with my iPhone 13. Let's see. All kidding aside, I think those videos you made from Puerto Rico were outstanding. Oh, thanks, man. I enjoyed filming there too. I think it was a lot of fun. Oh, sorry. Did someone become a member earlier? I was wondering how people sent this message thing. Oh, got it. Thank you, Halami, for your continued support. I'm still mad Apple chose to ditch a superior port for 2 inferior standards. Oh, God. So much inferior ports out there. How's the weather up north where you are? It's pretty cold. I mean, it never snows here, but it's definitely much, much colder than Puerto Rico. It was quite a juxtaposition. I think that when you have seasons and you kind of like slowly go from hot weather to cold weather, your body adjusts to it really well. But when we spent a couple weeks in Puerto Rico, we got really, really accustomed to like 80-degree weather every day. And then suddenly within a single day, we came back home and it was like 50 degrees, 40 degrees, and it was really, really cold, and that kind of caught us off guard. I think we adjusted from cold to hot a lot better. Obviously it was pretty cold here when we left. Then we got to Puerto Rico and we were like, this is so nice, it's so warm. But going backwards was like, ugh, ugh. I adjusted the heat better, basically. Ben says, loved your vlogs. How did you do underwater video? Basically through the iPhone. I think there was like 2 or 3 shots in the very last vlog that I used a GoPro with. My friend that we were visiting had a GoPro Hero 9, and we were scuba diving basically and touring the coral reef. So he had a GoPro, and I didn't want to take my iPhone too deep, so that's why I didn't take it like 25, 30 feet deep. So we used the GoPro for that. But for everything else, I used my phone. Most of the underwater shots was on the iPhone 13. When was the last time they did an AR demo at an event? What do you think would make Apple Glass worth it, and what would make it more of a gimmick? It's been a while, I think, since they've done an AR demo. But yeah, it's confusing hearing all these reports about there being this AR headset that's $3,000 because I can't, like a headset you can't wear in public all the time. It's not going to be like an Apple Watch or AirPods. A headset is something that you'd use in your living room or your office for some games, maybe a virtual workspace type thing, but it's going to be fairly niche, fairly gimmicky, not something that would sell at high volume. So that's what I would consider a gimmick. If they find a way to do glasses where it looks like a fairly normal pair of glasses, maybe a little bit beefy than a typical pair, but you just put them on, and what would make them worth it is, I think, just how they can tie your ecosystem together. The idea that anywhere you want, you could get a notification and not have to look away from, having a conversation from someone, or being able to put a TV on a wall. You can just be like, Apple TV, bam, or you're using your MacBook and now you're like, I want an external screen, boom. Or you get notifications on your phone, and instead of covering up the screen on your phone, they come out from behind your phone. Or picture-in-picture, if you were watching a video on your phone, instead of having to navigate the little picture-in-picture somewhere on your screen, it just plays right next to your phone, and you can have a full screen email, messages, or Twitter, and then the video playing right next to the phone. The possibilities are really endless when it comes to AR, if you can use it anywhere, and the battery life is good enough, and the resolution is nice. Excuse me. Sorry, I got something frog in my throat. But I don't really care if it's expensive. Like, I would definitely buy the glasses and use them if that's what they were capable of. a lot of practical use cases like that where there are things that you could see yourself using all the time. Using a little Angry Birds AR demo in the living room, that's I don't care about that. I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars just so I can play some immersive VR experience or something. Like I don't. I've tried VR. I've tried headsets like that. It's kind of nifty, but it's the kind of thing you try on and use a couple times and then you leave it and you don't touch it for months. It's like if it's not mobile, it's not something you can take with you and use throughout the day. It's extremely gimmicky. So I think the idea of actual AR. I know everyone keeps saying it's an AR headset, but I don't really consider it AR at the end of the day because it's still rumored to be a display that sits on your nose, which means you're not actually looking at the normal world. There might be cameras on the outside that are ultra wide, so they you put them on and then you can see through the headset and you can see people, but it's just a camera. That's going to be the more gimmicky side of things. If they actually do glasses where you can see through them, but then the holograms are projected on top of that, that's when I think they'd be game changing. But again, I don't think we're going to see that this year or probably even next year. When do you think smart glasses will become smart contacts? Oh God, we can't even get glasses down yet. Now we're talking about contacts. Ugh, probably a decade or more. Excuse me. It's so refreshing to hear a young person talk about the realities of virtual VR in a realistic way. Yeah, it's like virtual reality is basically putting a TV on your nose. That's what VR headsets are. Um, do you think the next E will have MagSafe or U1 chip? I hope so. Yeah, I don't know why it couldn't. It definitely would feel weird for Apple to introduce an iPhone now when Apple is still selling the 12 and the 12 mini and the whole 13 lineup, which are all MagSafe compatible, then to release a new iPhone that doesn't have MagSafe. Yeah, I don't buy it, especially because the new iPhone SE is supposed to, still retain that $399 price point, which is really affordable. But Apple loves MagSafe. They've always been trying to upsell people. Get this wallet, get this MagSafe battery pack, get this case with MagSafe compatibility. So they love to upsell people on the MagSafe accessories. Why wouldn't you bring it to a new iPhone? I don't know. Maybe because of the way the iPhone SE is built or something, they can't fit it. But yeah, I'd be kind of surprised if it didn't. U1 chip also, like that's also become kind of a modern normal thing now, so why not? I just have the feeling that very first version of AR glasses are going to be nothing like what Drew described it. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm guaranteed sold on it. Like there's a bunch of things I could see them potentially doing with it that would make it interesting and compelling for me to buy. But it's totally possible they could botch it. I mean, they could release a pair of glasses and all it basically does is deliver notifications. Maybe it puts the time in the corner of your eye, or it gives your activity rings, or it's just a camera. It's just like something you can take pictures and videos with, and it's like Snapchat spectacles. Yeah, I wouldn't. I would review it for the channel. I would give it a shot. I would pick one up and talk about it on camera and tell you guys my experience. But I don't think I would keep that. I'm more interested in the just holograms, 3D holograms everywhere, but notifications on the wall. Put picture frames here, put a TV here, an external monitor here. Notifications come out from behind your devices. I see it as the ultimate bridge of all of the Apple products working together. It's like the perfect Apple ecosystem product where everything will just start to work seamlessly together, and life will just feel more surreal because of all the holograms everywhere that just look very immersive. And I just don't think the tech is ready for it. But if it's not ready for it, then yeah, I wouldn't commit to it. Kind of depends on how they demonstrate it. If the glasses turned out that amazing, how much would you be willing to spend on it? Probably $2,000 or $3,000, I think, because if you think about the potential of being able to slap a monitor or external screen, or just how much easier it would make your iPhone and iPad experience if you had holograms that could put widgets to the side of your phone, and your battery percentage, right? Everyone wants the battery percentage to come back. What if they just made it a little icon that popped out from the side of the phone? Or if your phone is sitting on a table and you look at it from across the room, the battery percentage is listed above it. Or when you get a notification, a little green bubble pops up and the message opens up, so you can read the text from across the room and be like, oh, they texted me, huh? There's all kinds of futuristic demos I could think of if you got the AR glasses stuff right, and I imagine that Apple probably has thought of more use cases or cooler applications than I have. And there's basically nothing else like it. So even if you think $2,000 or $3,000 is crazy or unrealistic, I would say it's not overpriced because there's nothing else on the market that could offer something that does the same thing. Um, and I know that the technology of making holograms that appear that are good battery life on the glasses, but still rich quality and high pixel density. Um, I don't think that is going to be cheap. I don't think it's going to be easy to manufacture that. So I don't believe it needs to be affordable. Some people are like, oh no, they wouldn't even try it if it was not under $1,000. I'm like, no, I've seen Apple try some crazy things before and been like, well, nothing else is on the market that's close to this, so we're going to charge what we want for it. Um, Belkin and Anker have made amazing MagSafe accessories. Do you think Apple should stop wasting their time making average chargers and just buy out Anker and Belkin? For antitrust purposes, it's probably not a good idea. Obviously, if they just want to incorporate Anker and Belkin's stuff into their own first-party hardware, I'm fine with that, but it's probably in their better interest to just make it themselves. Just buy the same parts and supplies that Anker and Belkin buy. And I thought I remember reading a report a long time ago that Apple was working on gallium nitrate chargers that would basically be much smaller, so that our bricks wouldn't have to be as massive as they are. You could do like a 30-watt brick that was the size of the 18-watt brick, and you could do a 18-watt brick or a 20-watt USB-C brick that's the size of the 5-watt brick. I don't know why Apple hasn't got on that train. Other companies can do it. Why can't they? Um, do you use Apple Pencil much? Probably not as much as others. I think people who are artists or who draw a lot probably use it more than I do. I don't draw or use it for artistry. It's mostly helpful for me when I'm doing video thumbnails, especially if I'm pulling out an image that I want to mask out the background of. That's when the Apple Pencil's really helpful. But yeah, those examples are pretty far and few between. I only do it maybe 2 or 3 times a week for a couple minutes. I probably could get by without it, but when I bought the iPad Pro, I wanted to showcase for the channel and review the pencil and talk about how the new one, because I hated the old pencil. Not at first, but as soon as the Apple Pencil 2 came out, I was like, oh, why didn't you do that in the first place? Why did you even come up with the Apple Pencil 1? So once the Apple Pencil 2 came out, I was like, yeah, that's way better. I just like that it's magnetic and it sits on the side. So I do use it, and on the very, very few instances when I do use it, it's extremely helpful. It's like, oh my god, I can get so much more precise now. But yeah, those times I do use it are not that common. Have you tried the latest Oculus? Thoughts? Not the latest one, but I've used one before it. I'm sure it's just slightly better than the one I used before that one. Are they still called Oculus? Are they not Meta or whatever now? How's the branding with all that working? I feel bad for that demographic because it seems like everyone who bought into the Oculus thing is just frustrated with how Meta's been running the company and requiring you to have a Facebook account and all that crap. So it's like, I'm not in that field, and I'm kind of not envious of the people that are. I mean, it's cool that you can put a TV on your face and look around with a gyroscope, I guess. I don't have many use cases for it. I don't run into situations where I'm like, man, if only if I had a VR headset. Kind of an interesting use case that I hadn't thought about before, but my friend that we stayed with in Puerto Rico, he worked from home as well. He also had a 16-inch MacBook Pro, so I posted on Instagram like both of our MacBooks side by side. People were like, wait, did you get two? I was like, no, that's my friend Zach's. But he's working remotely. He works online, and his company bought a bunch of their, employees that work from home, so they don't have an office space. Like, the whole company is done online. But they have all these different employees, and they wanted to make like a virtual office setup. So they bought everybody the latest Oculus headset. Which is it? Is it the 2 or the Quest 2? I don't keep track. The latest generation version of it, the one with the remotes and the higher quality screen and all that. So basically, he's going to get that and put it on so that he can interact and work with all the different people in his company, and they have a shared screen within that virtual world. So even though he's talking and interacting with all these employees that are in different parts of the world, they're all going to have this like virtual office environment with their own, avatars that they can talk to and interact with, and use the computer in front of them and have the screens in there. And it was cool. He showed me some of the demos of it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't have a use for that because I'm a one-man crew, so I didn't ask him much, but I didn't really understand what the benefit was of having a virtual workspace of like, let's pretend we're all sitting at an office table and looking at this TV together. Is that substantially better than just a typical Zoom call? Is that, I don't, Quest 2, yeah. That's what he got. I think it sounds a lot cooler than it probably is, having tried the VR stuff in the past, but yeah, it's still interesting. I saw a MetaQuest ad while watching basketball. Wow, that's a good use of targeted advertising, Meta. Let's see. Is iPad mini better or the new iPad Air for use of browsing and watching films, etc., not for work purposes? I think the new iPad Air 5 coming out in a couple months will be pretty much identical to the iPad mini 6, other than size. That's literally going to be the only difference. They're both going to have LCD liquid retina displays. They're both going to have center stage. They'll both have a 5G option. They'll both have decent cameras. And they'll both have the 815 chip. So what it really comes down to is, do you want a larger display to watch your content on or to do split screen multitasking? Or do you want a more portable design that you can technically fit in your pocket? The iPad mini fit in my pocket. You want something that's more portable, that's not going to take up as much space. Not to mention affordable. The iPad mini will be cheaper, so if you care about saving $100, I would still push you towards the iPad mini if you could, just because I would say if you can get comfortable with the iPad mini design, then you saved yourself $100. If you can't get comfortable with it, then you got to spend extra money to get a hold of the Air 5. And I don't think the Air 5 is going to be that different. No, according to Apple, they all have the same, all iPads have pretty much the exact same battery life, all 10 hours. I don't think the iPad Air is going to be significantly better battery life than the Mini 6. Let's see. Will Apple bring multi-user support to iPads? We've been talking about that for years and they still haven't do it. The problem is that would require the iPad OS team to do their job, and they don't want to do that. The iPad OS team is lazy and doesn't want to add anything. Maybe they're understaffed. It could be Apple's fault. I don't know. But yeah, it feels like every single year we're like, iPad OS needs to do all these things, and then what we end up getting is none of them. And they're like, oh, we changed the multitasking menu again. Great. It's like, so I've kind of given up most hope on iPad OS. That's why I still rock my 2018 iPad Pro. I plan on keeping this for a long, long time. The only reason I would replace this is if it was stolen or broken. So far, it's not looking likely. It made it all the way to Puerto Rico. I actually took the same iPad to the Philippines, so it's been all over the world, and it's for the basic stuff iPads are good at. It does perfectly. It's good at the photo editing. It's good at checking email, watching YouTube, watching movies and stuff. That's the basic stuff iPads have always been good at, and this is still great at. Nothing I've read or heard about for upcoming iPad Pros has convinced me that it would be worth the upgrade aside from this, because all the differences are fairly minor in my opinion. I want to know what settings you used on your iPhone to film your vacation videos. Literally stuck. 4K at 60, the typical HEVC format. The key is to turn off HDR. I have no clue why, but when I started filming stuff outside, I got a few people saying, oh, Drew, now that you're filming outside, you should turn on the HDR mode, because then you could start uploading in HDR and show off the Dolby Vision and whatnot. I'm not kidding here, and I don't understand the thought process, but HDR mode literally has worse dynamic range. Like, I don't get it. It's insane that when I turned on the option, I tried to film a video in HDR, it literally makes my face super duper dark. It makes the shadows extremely dark to the point that it looks bad, like you can't see me very well. And then it makes all of the bright points of the shot overexposed and like blown out. I literally got better dynamic range when I turned off HDR. And I threw it into Final Cut. I messed with the settings. I was like, this doesn't look right. And I tried to adjust the exposures, and Final Cut even has a built-in thing. It was like HDR tools, and I tried to adjust it. I literally could not get the footage to look as good as the typical default, just basic HEVC 4K at 60 video mode. Basically, what your iPhone records in when you don't touch anything. If you don't go into settings, if you don't turn on anything, and you just unbox an iPhone for the first time, open the camera app and switch it to video, and of course make sure it's on 4K at 60, it looks fantastic. Like, everything was well balanced. You could see my face. It was well lit. The background wasn't overexposed. You could see everything in crystal clear quality. Nothing was overblown. None of the shadows was too dark. Just a regular video mode did fantastic. And Dolby Vision broke everything. I was like, what is the point of this feature? I don't understand. HDR is literally about including all of the worst dynamic range. It's like, okay, if you're turning on HDR, that means you have to break all of the shadows and break all of the highlights, and then there's no in between. Like, no amount of color correcting made it look as good as the standard video app. I'm sorry I didn't do a video breaking down why Dolby Vision breaks everything, but it didn't work. Yeah, Ryan says looked fire on my OLED. I was incredibly impressed with it. I thought the iPhone 13 did a great job. I'm with you. I turn off Dolby Vision on my iPhone and my videos look better. It makes no sense. Dolby Vision video takes more storage, so it fills up the phone faster. It also heats up the phone faster. Also, every time you try to play the video, it has to boost the nits. The brightness gets insanely high when you watch the video back again, to the point that it's annoying. You'll be like in a dark environment and like, let me watch this video, and the brightness is like, look at my range, and it's just terrible. Like, Dolby Vision is just a useless, stupid feature, at least in my experience. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know how I'm doing it wrong. I pointed the camera at a person outside. Is that not allowed? Or you're not supposed to do that? And I threw it into Final Cut and I added HDR tools onto it and I tried to color correct it. None of it helped. It still always looked worse. I was like, I don't know how it's supposed to work, but it's not working. Honestly, I think all HDR is overrated. I'll be honest with you. I think that the amount of dynamic range you can achieve in the normal non-HDR mode of most cameras and most screens, you can get plenty of dynamic range with that. And when cameras or screens start bragging about HDR, it typically just means boosting up the nits on very specific parts of the screen, so that parts of the TV are insanely bright while other parts are completely dark. And it's more of a like show-off feature. I don't think it's actually that useful. I can't recommend it. Coming in late, but what's the current rumor roundup of what we're expecting with the iPad Air 5? Basically, imagine an iPad Mini 6 but bigger. It's like center stage, 5G, A15 chip, maybe the flash on the back. So that's it. No changes with the display, still USB-C, no changes with the cameras or speakers rumored. I think it'll still start at 64 gigs, maybe some different color options. They'll have a purple and they'll have a starlight, and they'll make all the ugly colors no one likes. But honestly, I would love it if the Air 5 had a product red option. Oh my god. Take back everything I said about the iPad Air 5 if there's a product red. That would look amazing. I love it. I'm so sad with iPad OS's progression. 13 was amazing, 14 was fine, and 15 is downright bad. I hate to say I agree with you, Connor. Like, because of how limited iPad OS has been, I cannot recommend anyone spend more than maybe $700 to $800 on an iPad. If you're spending more than $800 on your iPad, you should probably just buy a MacBook. It's not going to be worth it just because of how limited the software is. So it's a boring update, and the iPad Air 5 will probably still cost $599, at which point I'm still going to recommend you try to find at least a used, if not certified refurbished iPad Pro on sale for $600, $700. It's still going to be much better value. HDR is so hard to watch in a dark room for some reason. Yeah, I'm with you. I can't see the darks. I have a normal non-HDR. Well, it says it has HDR, but it's not like OLED. It's like the TV we have is still LCD, and it works fine. I don't I don't want a super expensive HDR TV that's just gonna make my eyes hurt anyway. Are your neighbors loud like mine? They are, actually, yes. I do have loud neighbors. Shout out to those guys if you're watching. Be quiet. I don't want to hear your stupid cars rev up in the middle of the night. Okay, Paulo says, should I get a 256 gig Pro or a 128 gig Pro Max? Which option is the best? There's no best. It depends on what you do. Are you taking a crap ton of videos and pictures, especially long, high resolution videos? Probably 256 gig. Pro Max is going to be better battery life and a bigger screen if that's what you care about. There's no right answer. It just depends on the person. If you care about portability, take the smaller one. If you want the best battery life, take the bigger one. I don't know, man. iPad Pro is the best purchase we made in the last 2 years. Love it. Oh, I know. I agree. Like years ago, it was great. Like this was the best iPad I've ever bought, and I paid over $1,000 for it back in 2018. But 2020 iPad Pros, okay, kind of minor spec bump here and there. But the M1 iPad Pros, wouldn't recommend it. And the new iPad Pros coming out later this year with the M2 chip, and yeah, no, I'm not going to recommend people get those. I think they're just too much money for what they are, and you can get so much of the exact same experience in an older version of the iPad Pro. Mike likes Starlight. Okay, you can have your Starlight then. I haven't really used my iPad much after acknowledging that my iPhone 13 mini and M1 MacBook Air can do most of the tasks of an iPad just as well, if not better in some cases. There's a small use case, I would say, that's in between. Like, especially on my trip. I talk about this in the tech video that's going to drop shortly. The iPad Pro was perfect as a media consumption device that's not as heavy as my MacBook Pro. Although maybe because you have an M1 MacBook Air, that's not as big an issue to you because your MacBook is thin and lightweight. I have a MacBook Pro that is incredibly chonk. It's thick and it's heavy. So when you're on a plane or you just want to sit on the couch and browse Twitter or check email, do some basic web browsing and that kind of thing, it's definitely a lot easier for me to grab this than the MacBook. Because the MacBook is like this, here we go, and you don't want it to slide off, and it's a lot more expensive. This is my work computer. It's got 8 terabytes of storage and what have you. So this isn't immediately what I grab whenever I want something to just walk around the house with or watch YouTube with. But it's still definitely more mobile than a desktop, that's for sure. So I would not have been able to make content as efficiently on my trip to Puerto Rico had I have not owned this MacBook Pro. So I still don't regret that. But, thank you for the super chat, Ben. He says, I would love a product red iPad. Yeah, me too. I don't know why they can't make one of those. All of the colors they chose for the iPad Air 5 are too muted. I checked out the blue and green iPad Air in person, and I could barely tell. I was looking at them, and I was like, oh, that's a silver iPad. And then I picked it up, and I was like, oh, I guess it is blue. It's like a very, very slight shade. On the website, they make the colors look a lot more saturated than they are. In reality, the colors are not very vibrant. Whereas a deep red, like the same color as the Apple Watch Series 6 or the iPhone 13, I guess the 7 has a red color too. But the iPhone 13 red on an iPad, that would look gorgeous. I would recommend that iPad specifically. Can I do that? Don't buy any other iPad, just the red one. Maybe if they do really good colors, like a very bright blue, or vibrant green instead of all these muted colors, that kind of thing. What would you think about Apple rebranding the iPod as a Bluetooth speaker? I had a Bose SoundLink Mini when I was growing up, and I thought having a Bluetooth speaker was cool because I was like, yeah, I can just play this great music wherever I am. And then I brought it with me to school, and everyone was kind of like, whoa, he has a speaker that's with him. And now I'm afraid that I've started a trend that I can't stop because now people bring Bluetooth speakers everywhere. They're all over schools. So many kids have them, and people take them in grocery stores. They walk around with them in public. And I regret it because when I started carrying around my SoundLink Mini to school and stuff, no one had them. I know I'm joking. I know I'm not the first person to do that, but where I lived, no one was doing that. I did not ever see someone just carry around a Bluetooth speaker with them. That was not a thing. And then I started doing it and I saw everybody do it. And now it annoys me. Every time someone's walking around, if I go to a beach, if I go to a park, if I go on a trail, if I go hang out by a lake or by the ocean, if someone's carrying a Bluetooth speaker and blaring music out of it, it's usually a song I don't want to hear. And it usually makes it harder to talk to the people standing right next to me. They've annoyed me. So I've moved away from Bluetooth speakers just because they were cool at first and now they're done to death and way too many people have them. So that's what inherently makes me not want an iPod come back to be a Bluetooth speaker, just because I think they're annoying. And I'm like, just use headphones. I guess it's kind of nice to have if you want a speaker that you can take around with you around the house, but I don't do that just because we have speakers in the house anyway, so we don't need to carry them around with us. But I would personally not want it, but yeah, I don't think we need to keep the iPod terminology around. I'm okay with that dying off. I think it should have died a long time ago. Is the Smart Folio worth it considering how expensive it is? If you can find, I like the Smart Folio because of how simple it is and how small the form factor is. I like how narrow this part is, especially when we were on airplanes and stuff. I was able to just drop this on the food tray in front of me and it doesn't take up too much space. Whereas if I had the Magic Keyboard case still or my MacBook and I put that on the food tray in front of me, it would take up the entire tray and there'd be no place for food or snacks or anything. So this was really, really convenient, having the Smart Folio not take up too much space, especially because if we had a layover at an airport, we could just put the iPad on our suitcase. You know, our suitcase is kind of small. It just has a little bit of a flat top, so I could just put the iPad on top of it. And if I had the Magic Keyboard case, it would not have fit. It wouldn't have worked. So if you can find a third-party Smart Folio cover that's cheaper and still highly reviewed, you know, people like it, and it's known to age well, then I'd say go for it. I just haven't found one. I honestly just haven't tried very hard to look around to find a cheaper version. But I like Apples just because of how simple they are. They're all magnetic, so if I want to take the case off, I do this actually pretty frequently. Because if I'm holding the iPad while me and my wife are watching a show in bed or something, if you hold it with this, it's a lot heavier and it's more uncomfortable to hold. So I'll just pop it off all the time and just use it without a case, which I love the way it feels because it's super thin and super lightweight. It's pretty much the lightest 13-inch display you can possibly get a hold of. It's not easy to find a screen that big that's lighter and that easy to pull out of the case, because obviously you want something to prop it up with occasionally, so making sure that disconnecting it from the cover was easy was a good thing to prioritize. So yeah, it's expensive, but it works really well. It sucks that there's no like height adjustment thing, but I typically will just what I'll do is if I want the iPad to be tilted more towards me, I'll put the pencil behind the cover and it'll stick out the side like that. And if the Apple Pencil isn't enough, then I'll stick like AirPods Pro behind the cover and it'll be like almost perfectly flat. So that's like as upright as you could possibly get. If I push it a little far forward, it'll fall over. But if you're like FaceTiming or something, just take your AirPods, stick it behind the smart cover, and it'll make it higher. Set it down that way without them. Yeah, you can jerry rig away. You don't need to buy a $350 keyboard case just because you want this thing to be propped a little bit closer. Mine is a knockoff that basically looks like Apple's, but with a flap to cover an Apple Pencil. Oh, interesting. I never liked the flaps on the covers. That always annoyed me. Let's see. Get the knockoff Smart Folio. The iPad Pro definitely still has its use cases. I still haven't sold mine for a reason, but I just don't like how both iPads could easily replace MacBooks if it weren't for Apple. I think there's a way you can have both. I'm still not under the belief that if you make the iPad more practical, it has to kill off the Mac. I think there's a difference between the two. Like, if you make an iPad that can replace a MacBook, make it more expensive than the MacBook. They've already done that. You just haven't done it with the software. Like, you can get an iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard case, sure, but it costs more than a MacBook Air, so I don't see it cannibalizing the MacBook Air. And the I/O isn't as good. There's only one USB-C port. There's no headphone jack. I don't think the speakers are as good. It has its own set of advantages, sure, because it's a touch screen and it's got Apple Pencil support and all that. But, I just think by Apple not making iPadOS more practical and functional, they are just losing out on iPad sales. I don't see it as protecting the Mac sales. The Mac sales will be fine. Don't worry about the Mac. Like, the people will buy those. There's enough people that don't want a touch screen. And if you do lose someone on a Mac, it'll be because they're spending more money on an iPad. So Apple will literally get more revenue if they just made these more Mac-like. If someone's not buying a MacBook Pro and instead buying an iPad Pro, you got more of their money, Apple. So I still see it as a win. I agree with Simply Pops. 2018 iPad Pro is the best Apple product in years. I feel like it's the Apple product that's been undefeated for so long. Like, it's so hard to justify upgrading this thing. Like, even 4 years later, all they've got against it now is like, okay, mini LED, center stage, LiDAR, nothing really that compelling. The amount of reasons there are to upgrade this iPad Pro are so insanely small compared to everything else. Let's see. For the price, I think Apple's one kind of wear off too quickly. I've had the same one for 4 years now. Well, I guess I have two of these. Someone gifted me a gray one. So I have a white one and a gray one that I switch between. But they get a little dirty, but it still works. I mean, practically. How was your trip as a whole? It was amazing. It was wonderful. Mostly because this was the first time I actually worked away from home, and being able to use the whole Apple ecosystem and having, there was plenty of downtime. I saw people asking how was your vacation? And I was like, vacation isn't the right word, because I was still working, but it was just a change of scenery. I just figured because I have this great job, thanks to you guys supporting me and watching the videos, I get to make content and talk about things that interest me. Why am I restricting myself to an office? If I'm capable of working wherever there's an internet connection, why not see the world and explore more? So that is the first of many trips we have planned for this year. There's other places we're planning on going. So I'm glad I have a MacBook, and I'm glad I was able to utilize the whole ecosystem to the max while I was far away from home, and still able to create tons of content and post all the time, and even do live streams while I was away from home, and the audio was pretty good. So it was great. And also, when you're done with work, being able to say, okay, now let's go check out this beach. Now let's go on a hike. Now let's check out this rainforest. Now let's go meet these people. And, there was all kinds of things I learned. The Puerto Rican culture was something I knew very little about. I could not identify Puerto Rico on a map 2 months ago, but these friends reached out to us and they were like, hey, we're moving. Do you want to come see the place we're staying at? And we said, sure. And, we want to try to travel more. That was our goal for 2022. And we're already starting off on a good note. I've spent more time in Puerto Rico this year than I have my home state. So it was a long trip, but it was fun. And the weather was fantastic. The food was great. It was a very interesting mesh of Spanish culture and American culture put together. There's a lot of people that speaking Spanish and English simultaneously, darting back and forth, and their own kind of food. The food was different from what I thought it was going to be, and it was delicious. And just the culture, everyone there is very friendly. So it was wonderful. I would definitely go back if I could. I don't know when we'll go back, but we're definitely going to go back at some point. That's for sure. Green screen can go bad easily. That's exactly right. You could use a picture you took as a background for your videos. I've just never been a fan of green screen, because even when you get the lighting right and even when you get the masking right, it always looks like a green screen. There's a very recognizable, obvious green screen look that I don't like. I just don't. I think it looks cheap. I think it looks tacky. Some channels do it. That's their decision. You know, they can do whatever they want. That's fine. But I always just thought it looked kind of dumb. I just don't like the look of a green screen. So I could, but I'd rather just have my typical background. I think a real background always looks better than a green screen, in my view. Um, but the whole purpose of Puerto Rico was not just so I could spice up my background. I hope you guys know that. I knew I couldn't take this background with me. So obviously, if I was going to have a background away from home, I was going to try to choose. I will always try to choose the most interesting one possible. But yeah, I that was not the point. We had friends that invited us to stay with them and look around and see the place. My wife had been to Puerto Rico several times, but I had never been there. So now I know a lot about it. I've learned a lot about the area. We saw most of the island. I mean, not most, but we saw like every corner of the island. We traveled to the southern parts, the east parts, the west parts, the northern parts. You know, we saw quite a bit of it, and took all the major freeways, daytime and nighttime, and I feel like we had a pretty thorough Puerto Rican experience, and I would definitely go back, especially knowing I could work there. Paulo says, "Come to Costa Rica. It's not the same, but I think you would enjoy it. Plenty of beaches and tropical rainforests." Yeah, the thing that makes it much easier for us to travel is knowing people, and I don't talk about like I'm not talking about fans because that's dangerous to just be like, oh, I'll just hit up people that live in this area and then crash on their couch. But we knew the people that invited us to Puerto Rico personally. You know, they weren't like fans or anything. They were friends with my wife, and we met up with them several times before they moved there. So we knew them well. Um, and when you know someone in a faraway place and they have a place for you to stay, that makes the trip far more affordable. Whereas if you have to rent out an Airbnb or a hotel, that makes traveling far more expensive. So it's not like we'd never go to a place we don't know people. It's just there's already a big list of places we're planning on going to this year because we have friends or family there. And we, of course, want to keep up and we want to see our friends and family because a lot of these people we haven't seen for a long time. So that's taking priority. But yes, in the future, we hope to hit up all kinds of different places, and even if we don't know people there. Did you ever need to replace your battery in your iPad Pro yet? I probably could. I don't know what the battery health is at. I'm guessing around 80% or less, just because I fast charged this thing a ton over the years, and it's getting old, and it's definitely been used a lot. Pretty much used every day for 4 years, and it's been fast charged, so I'm sure the battery health isn't great, but it's good enough to get me through the day. It's not like unbearably bad that I can't use the thing, especially because a lot of its life is just around the house. You know, I take it on trips and stuff, but I don't take it like to friends' houses or when I'm running errands. I don't take it with me, so it's usually within decent reach of a charger. So it would probably benefit from a battery replacement, but I don't see the point. I don't know how much it's going to cost. Um, Christmas time in Puerto Rico is the best. Next time come in December. So much fun. Lights, fireworks, food, and fiestas. I'm sure we saw a lot of the remnants of the Three Kings holiday. They still have a lot of decorations up for the Three Kings. But yeah, I'm sure it's amazing. The problem is we have all these family and friends that always come to visit during Christmas. So it's kind of like leaving a bunch of people hanging if you decide, hey, I'm going to take Christmas away from you guys in another part of the country. So it's hard to travel during the holidays because there's already a lot of set plans, but I would love to. Especially, it was just a great way to break up the winter because it's obviously a lot colder here. It doesn't snow. It's not like super cold, but it's cold for us who are used to the warmer weather. And being able to go to some place in January where it's 80 degrees every day, that was super nice. I stayed at my girlfriend's father's house. It was pretty nice, but that's the only time I have done it. Other times I just go to a hotel. Yeah, they're definitely more pricey that way, but it helps to know people. So that's what we're prioritizing. 2019, not 2017, because the hurricanes that happened that year. Oh yeah, yeah. The hurricanes hit everything. That was bad. Um, I'm sure it delayed everyone's plans. Absolutely. Um, let's see. I think the best, easiest way to do green screen is to embrace it. Have fun with it. Don't try to make it look perfect. even if you, I don't know like how you have fun with it, because the end result is always just it looking kind of cheap in my view. I never really looked at someone's setup and been like, wow, that looks awesome. That's a really good green screen. Of course, everyone said that when I started filming in Puerto Rico, because they're like, oh, there's no way he's there. Stop complaining about it being cold. Well, when you're used to it getting up to the 100 degrees, as it, last year where I live, it got up to 110, 112 degrees several days in a row. Once you start dipping into the 60s and 50s, then it's pretty cold. It's colder than you're used to. I know it's not the coldest place on Earth, but I could also say back to you, Alpha, stop complaining about your weather, because people in Antarctica have it colder than you do. And the Martians have it colder than the people in Antarctica. So there's always somewhere colder. Let's see. When I draw, it's usually something stupid, like a buff version of my friend using an anime character. That's a good way to utilize the Apple Pencil. Oh my god. There's always a bigger fish. I have an iPhone XR with a broken screen with only $100 left on it. Should I get the screen fixed or get a new phone? Oof. $100 left on it, so you haven't paid it off and you broke it? Oh man. I guess I would say get a new phone. I don't know. Do the carriers have some kind of option? I feel like there's been several carriers that are like, bring us your broken phone and we'll give you a discount on a new one, or something like that. I don't know. I would probably suggest the cheaper option. I don't know how much it costs to replace the screen on a 10R, but if it's not that much, I would probably recommend that. If it is going to cost you several $100s, then I'd rather you just buy a new phone, I guess. Let's see. 65 degrees for me is very cold. If you grew up in a tropical climate and you're used to it being 100 degrees all the time, then yeah, it's pretty cold. 60 degrees is particularly cold if you've been used to 80 degrees every day, and then you suddenly 20 degrees cooler, and it gets much colder at nighttime. It gets like 40 degrees or less. That's a pretty sudden drop in temperature when you get comfortable in the tropical weather. What are the rumors of the 10th gen iPad? That's an interesting one, because there's got to be one this year. They've done a budget iPad every year, but I haven't heard much about the iPad 10. Hopefully this is the time they do a laminated display, but I feel like the boy who cried wolf on that one. I feel like I've asked for it so many times and it still hasn't happened. $200 for a new screen, and you've got $100 left on it? Ugh. I don't know. I would probably push for a new phone at that point. Why is Verizon so expensive compared to every other carrier? They're very bloated. They spend a ton of money on advertising and all of their stores and locations. But what you notice is that the major carriers usually try to rope everyone in with sales. They'll give you the new iPhone for only $200, or they'll let you switch to this iPhone. They give you all these discounts on the hardware so that you feel like you're getting a good deal, but they get all of their money back with their overpriced monthly fees. That's how you get people spending $300, $400 a month, and you can get the same unlimited data or the same coverage through Visible or Mint Mobile or far, far cheaper NVMOs that are going to provide basically the exact same service. It might be deprioritized, but when they did a test comparing Mint Mobile to T-Mobile in speeds, even though Mint Mobile's deprioritized, they noticed no difference in speed. Like, my friend Randy has T-Mobile, and I have Mint Mobile, and we actually met up in person not long ago, just for a couple minutes. We didn't have much time, but he was in the Bay Area, and I was in the Bay Area, so we met up at an In-N-Out, and we just hung out for a minute. I did a speed test on my phone, and he did one on his phone. I have Mint, he has T-Mobile. I got faster speeds, even though Mint Mobile is supposedly deprioritized. I don't think that means Mint Mobile will always get faster speeds. I'm just saying the difference is small. It's like the difference between 100 megabits down and 80 megabits down. You know, you can still watch a video, you can still download things, you can still have a FaceTime call. It's not like it's so deprioritized that you can't do anything. It's just it's slightly slower, but it's a fraction of the price because they're not going to be offering all of those sales or transfer promotions and that kind of thing. So they rope you in with the sale, and then they get all their money back through the monthly fees, which absolutely I would say is not worth it. I would not say you should stay with a major carrier because they gave you some nice discount on your iPhone. You can find unlocked iPhone discounts yourself. You can find certified refurbished iPhones for much cheaper, or used iPhones in good condition for much cheaper, and get NVMO much cheaper carriers and save yourself a ton of money. It's not worth putting up with. I had Verizon for years, and just dealing with the accounts and the billing, and how bloated that company is with how much money they spend on advertising and their stores and all the staff, and it's so big they have to charge you all that extra money, and it's not worth it. Don't do it. If you can help it. Obviously, some of you live in an area where none of the Visible or Mint Mobile options are going to work for you, so you have to go with the major carrier because that's the only thing that works. I get it. You got to do it sometimes, but if you can help it, if there's a chance that you can switch off of them, I would absolutely recommend it. It's been the best decision for me, leaving Verizon for Mint. That's not a sponsorship. They're not paying me to say that. I'm just saying from my experience with the coverage being great and not missing the complexities. I just had a billing question today with Mint Mobile. I was just like, can you switch this renewal balance to my wallet so I don't have to get charged a fee if I change my plan early? And they were like, yep, no problem. And it took like 5 minutes, and it's just customer support right through the app on Mint. I was like, can you transfer this renewal balance to my wallet? And it took a couple seconds. And I was like, thanks. So it's just the customer service has been great. The coverage has been great. So I've loved it so far. I can't say enough good things. The only thing I wish Mint Mobile had was cellular options on other devices. Like I would like to bring, if I don't know how much extra it would cost, but I would like to activate the cellular on my Apple Watch, or at least I'd like the option to. If they offered it, I might use it, or activate cellular on an iPad. They don't offer that kind of thing. I mean, most of the time, just use your hotspot anyway, right? Like that. So that's what I do. I use my phone's hotspot in a pinch, but that's just one thing that they don't have that I would be kind of nice if they did. Mint Mobile uses the T-Mobile antennas. Visible uses the Verizon antennas, which is another great affordable carrier that I don't have much experience with because Mint Mobile worked better for me. But especially if you care about having unlimited data, that's important to you. I would say Visible is a far better deal. That uses Verizon towers. And it's like you partner with a bunch of people, but then you don't have to know them. You can like partner with random people on Reddit, and you all have separate accounts and separate passwords and separate billing info. And I think you can get it to like $25 a month unlimited data using the Verizon towers. That's what my friend Nick has used, and he had great experience with it. He loved it. And then if you refer people, of course, all the smaller carriers have great referral programs. I think you can get it down to $5 a month if you refer a bunch of people. So definitely look for deals in the carrier space. It's worth it. Let's see. I just switched over the holidays to Mint. Works fine for what it is, and compared to what I pay postpaid, I'm saving a Mint too. As it is, I buy my phones outright, so their promo don't work. Yeah, I mean, that's just how the major carriers want to trick you. Is they're like, oh, I'm getting a deal, so I better stick with Verizon. But you're spending hundreds of extra dollars a month to be on their carrier, so you're not saving money by taking advantage of their, well, you'll get an iPhone 11 on us, or you'll get an iPhone 13 Pro on us when you switch, and they'll get their money back. Don't trust those deals, even if they sound good. But yeah, coverage is very subjective. It's going to change depending on where you are. I can't say confidently because there's 100 of you all watching from different places of the world. I don't know which places you guys are where Mint is going to work good or bad, but it's worth a shot. You just try it out and see if it works. If it does, then great. You just save yourself a ton of money. Speaking of mobile carriers, 2 of the 3 biggest carriers in Thailand are merging. Oof. T-Mobile doesn't give discounts or deals for current customers, just like the prices, and able to do payment plans for stuff. That's interesting. I'm sure from what I've seen, it still costs more. It's hard to beat. It's hard to beat Mint, especially if you don't use that much data. I was just having a conversation with some friends recently, and they were on T-Mobile, and they were like, yeah, we're all on the unlimited data plans, and we roped our phone payments into the and everything. And I was like, well, do you really need unlimited data? Because Mint Mobile has this like $15 a month option for 4 gigs, and 4 gigs sounds bad, right? Because everyone's like, oh no, I need unlimited data, and we were like, well, I bet you don't use as much data as you think. Like let's go into settings and figure it out. So we found their data receipts from T-Mobile, and pulled up the information on the website, and it was like they were all using 2 gigs, 3 gigs a month, like for the past year. You know, they're paying for unlimited data, but they're only using 2 or 3 gigs a month. It's like you could easily switch Mint Mobile to using the exact same towers for a fraction of the price. They were paying. I mean, their phones themselves were financed, so they had some money coming in just from the. But it was like probably $200 or $300 a month for their whole family to just be on that network because they need the unlimited data. And it was like the connection was great in Puerto Rico. I actually got better reception in Puerto Rico than I do here. I usually have 3 bars in most of the places where I live around here, which is fine. It's plenty fast. And then when I'm in Puerto Rico, I had 4 bars like all the time. It was incredibly fast. Where can you check? I think you can check on Mint's website. I don't know, but I got to get going here. It's been fun live streaming again. It's good to be back, but I appreciate you all for tuning in and watching the stream. But I do actually have a new tech video, of course, prepared for you. I'm not going to do this every time, but I did do it this time. So I'm going to drop the video right now. And it's about my experience with the Apple ecosystem and how easy it made my traveling experience. So link is in the chat. Feel free to check it out. And I will chat with you all later. Take care, all. Have a good day. Bye-bye.